One of the most amazing things about Taiwan shows is how good all the actors are at crying. Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director and editor, and today I'm going to be talking about the new Netflix series Born for the Spotlight from Taiwan. This series is about Taiwanese actresses at various stages of their career navigating the Taiwanese film industry. You have the young, up-and-coming actress that's trying to make it and break into the industry. You have a few older actresses that have been around for a long time and are trying to maintain their relevance. You have actresses that are in the middle of their career, navigating the transition from being sex symbol to something else and how they lose their status. You have people that were formerly extremely famous and very respected, but have since been disillusioned with the industry and ostracized themselves by being too outspoken. There's a lot of different types of archetypes of actress that you see in this show, and that is part of what makes it so interesting. I think the great thing about this show right off the bat is that it is a female-centered show. The director is a female, most of the main characters are female, and the situations we're talking about are from this female perspective. I think that Taiwanese film culture is still very masculine, so it's great to see a show that talks about the female side of the film industry and how difficult it is for actresses to navigate it. I think some of the most interesting things we see are about how the male characters kind of interact with these female characters in a way that can be very disrespectful, and how society at large can be very disrespectful to these people. So in terms of a topic for a show, I think it's a great one, and I think that it's very well executed, and the people involved all really understand what they're making because they all are from that world. All the actors, all the directors, this is their daily life. So it feels very true and very real, and that's great. I'd say the one criticism I have of it is always in these kinds of shows about the film industry or shows about show business, there is a self-importance that kind of comes out. There's a lot of scenes where the actresses are talking about how hard they work and how difficult it is to be an actress. And I think that can seem a little tone deaf to the normal person, like, you're famous and you have to keep telling us how hard it is to be famous. I mean, after a certain point of hearing that over and over again, I start to roll my eyes a little bit. However, the show does a really good job of balancing that out by showing some of the behind the scenes people. One of the best characters in this show is this character named Bihu Gecko, who is a manager of some of these actresses, and how hard he works behind the scenes. And you really see how he gets worn down and how he wants to live his life, but he also feels like he wants to put a lot of energy into his work. It's a more, I would say, down to earth part of the show, where as a normal person, you can relate more to this character. I would say the most relatable character in the show is Bihu, and the actor does a great job of portraying this predicament. I don't want to give away too many of the plot points of the show because I don't want to spoil it. I think it's great. Go and check it out. I won't run down all the specifics of the show, but I will say in general, the acting of this show is the highlight. All of the female leads are really, really doing a great job here. I think one of the most amazing things about Taiwan shows is how good all the actors are at crying. I would say that the strength of this director is showing arguments and showing kind of conflicts, human conflicts between people. That's where the show really gets interesting, is when you see people confronting each other, discussing their problems. The language they use feels very realistic. There's ups and downs to all the arguments that people are having, like people getting upset, people are yelling, sometimes people are having an argument and they start laughing. There's all these kinds of interesting dynamics that are drawn out of it, and it feels very real, very dramatic, over the top, exaggerated, of course, but there is a realism element to that. That said, there's a few times where I think the show veers into over exaggeration. Particularly the character that I didn't like was the character of Chubby. I thought that actress has a hard time portraying realism in the way that the other actors do. She is too exaggerated. It's almost as if you're watching her and she is acting as if she's acting, and she's not supposed to be an actress. I think this actress in particular is from theater, from commercials, and she doesn't feel real like the other actors in the show. So in terms of acting, I say most people are great. Unfortunately, Chubby was the one person who took me out of the show. I think when the most important thing and the difficult thing to do is to keep people within the world that you've created. When there's an inconsistency, then that takes you out of the show and it reminds you you're watching a show, and that's not a good thing. I do say in general, I think Taiwanese shows recently and cinema, more recent cinema, have this problem of almost watching themselves doing things that are like, okay, this is a comedy bit, so we need to make sure that everybody knows it's comedy, and that is when you get taken out of it. Your comedy is not rooted in the situation and in the world. It's rooted in the idea of like, okay, we want to make this funny, so let's go ahead, be over the top, make it funny. Try your best to make it funny. Even the character that I like the most, Bihu, sometimes veers into this territory with his acting. His comedic stuff can feel a little too over the top. However, I did excuse it with him because there is a way that it fits into his character where he is this manager that is pretending a lot. So he's over the top, he's exaggerated, he's trying to alleviate tension. So when he's being overly exaggerated and overly comedic, that makes sense and it relates to his character. So it works for me. However, some other times in this show, that dynamic didn't exist and people were not being realistically funny. They were being funny, what I believe, for the sake of the show, because we needed a comedic moment. And I don't think that that's the right choice when you're making something. I would say the story structure of this was very satisfying. I really want to spoil the ending, but I won't. But I will say that the conclusion of this show is fantastic. It's my favorite thing about it. I loved the ending episode. I thought everything wrapped up in a great way, in a way that a lot of Netflix shows don't often do. You know, a lot of shows want to have a cliffhanger because they want to have a second season. This show gives you a satisfying character arc for almost every storyline that you're watching. And everything wraps up in a way where you understand the message of the show. Without giving away the plot points, I would say that the message of this show is about cherishing your life and not putting too much stock into your work, because what you imagine is going to fulfill you might not. This idea of becoming an actress, becoming famous, becoming this, that's not gonna be what fulfills your life. What fulfills your life are your relationships, are how you manage your day-to-day life, understanding yourself and loving yourself. And I think that is kind of, sounds like a broad message, but that is really what I would take away when you watch the show. It's something to think about when you watch the show, is how is this show contributing that message. And I think within every character, within every story arc of this show, that is the message that we're getting. It feels very focused in that way, and I really like that. I will say there are a few storylines that I didn't think were organized within the show well. I say principally the one is the character Nini, who is one of the friends. She feels like a character that doesn't really fit within the show. They didn't really they wanted to include her, but they didn't really figure out how her storyline fit in with others. Her storyline is kind of related to she's a beautiful actress that in the past, you know, did some pornographic roles, and now she's trying to kind of move past that and become more respected, but she also is in love with a guy who can't really admit that he's in love with her. I would say this storyline is the most confused and the least clear, and its ending feels a little bit tacked on. I will spoil this a little bit. You know, it's ended with a voiceover, so look out for that. And I think that to me signals that they tacked on the ending because they didn't feel like they had a satisfying one. As an editor, oftentimes we'll add a voiceover when we want to fix something that's not working within the shooting. So if they shot a bunch of stuff and we're editing it together and we're like, this storyline isn't really coming together the way we want, let's put a voiceover on top to try to explain what we're trying to do here. And I think that's what happened within this show. I think that this show has a little bit of a problem of not knowing how to set up conflict well. They introduce a couple conflicts where they happen very suddenly and they resolve very quickly. Now, they have some very good conflict introductions. One of the things that happen throughout the entire run of the series, which is 12 episodes, that build to a very good crescendo, like certain storylines, like some of the love interests and how those relationships develop are developed very well. But then smaller conflict points don't feel as important. They kind of come up very suddenly and then are resolved very suddenly. And they're things that you don't that don't seem as difficult as they should be. Like, low stakes is the word I would use for a lot of stuff that happens in the middle of this show. However, overall, I forgive that because as a complete series, it's very satisfying towards the end. So I would highly recommend watching Born for the Spotlight. I don't want to say more because I don't want to give that much away, but the camera work, the writing, the acting, all very good in this series, and I definitely think it's a step up for Taiwanese Netflix series. It's one of the best that I've seen, and I hope they continue to make stuff like this. I gotta reiterate that I think it's so great to wrap up your series within the 12 episodes. Do not leave us on a cliffhanger. It always feels forced, almost always feels forced. It always is unsatisfying for the audience, and it's so much better if you treat these 12 episodes that you get, if you're going to make a Netflix series, like a complete work. You know, you might not get that second series. It's not a guarantee. So put everything you can into this complete work and wrap it up for us. Show us that you know how to complete something in a satisfying way. This is a big contrast between this show and a different show that came out in Taiwan that I also thought was good, called Light the Night. Light the Night had, I think, 4 seasons or 3 seasons, I can't remember how many, and each season ended in a way that left the audience, I believe, very unsatisfied. This doesn't do that. The end of this is a great conclusion, wraps everything up. It makes us feel like the show deserved our time. When you finish it, you feel like, okay, I'm glad I watched this. You gave me something complete to think about and consider. And at the end of this series, after I've finished it, I've been thinking about a lot of the moments in it because of that satisfying ending. So I would say that's one of the most important things. If you're going to develop a show or a series, try to resist the urge to put that tacked on cliffhanger for the money. That's going to only hurt you in the end, I think. I think that this show is going to be more successful for the fact that it wraps up rather than leaves us on an unnecessary cliffhanger for the promise of a second season that may or may not come. That's just my opinion. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe, write in the comments what you want me to review next, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon. I'll try my best. Bye.